Well, Brussels is where we are headed now to look at a different story. It's at the NATO summit, where Donald Trump says he wants to know what good the military alliance is anyway. This after the first of a two-day summit of NATO, the US president calling for a huge hike in defence spending by the 29 members of the group and lashing out at Germany, saying it's totally controlled by Russia. Well, to find out more, we can cross to Dave Keating in Brussels. Dave, firstly, tell us a bit more about what exactly is Trump asking for and how likely is he to get it?
Well, ahead of this summit, Trump sent letters to the other leaders within the NATO alliance demanding that they meet a 2% of GDP military spending target. This is something that NATO members agreed to on a voluntary basis at a summit in Wales a couple years ago. They're slowly making their way there. They say they can get there by 2024. But then suddenly during the NATO meeting, behind closed doors, we're told that Trump upped the ante and asked them to spend 4% of GDP, not just 2%. No, European countries are saying, look, that's just impossible. We're already struggling to meet the 2%. Asked about this yesterday at the end of the talks. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said, look, let's just focus on 2% for right now. But that doesn't seem to be making Trump happy. Yesterday, he tweeted that he wants these countries to get to 2% immediately, in all caps. European countries say you can't just increase spending, military spending immediately, deploying a huge amount of tanks on the streets suddenly. This is something that takes time. So this was the big conflict yesterday. Of course, that 2% target is something that previous U.S. administrations have been pestering European countries to do for a long time. This 4% target is new from the Trump administration, and it should be pointed out that even the United States does not meet a 4% target. They're at something more like 3.5, 3.7. So this is something that's really annoyed European leaders yesterday.
Well, meanwhile, Dave, aside from the money, this Thursday NATO leaders would hope to move on to focus on ending that costly and long-running war in Afghanistan.
Yes, Afghanistan is always the big topic at these NATO summits because it is the main thing that these allies do together, the mission in Afghanistan. There have been promising signs of ceasefires in Afghanistan. There's a hope that there may be some winding down or some movement in that extremely long-running war. So those discussions will be taking place today. How can they get ahead in Afghanistan? Because strategy after strategy does not seem to be working there. Those talks should go relatively smoothly. What could be more difficult is talks on Ukraine and Georgia. Despite all his protests yesterday, President Trump did sign off on the joint conclusions issued by all 29 NATO allies at the end of the day. But today, they're going to be discussing potential NATO enlargement to Georgia and Ukraine, something that Vladimir Putin adamantly opposes. And of course, Trump is going to be holding a bilateral summit with Vladimir Putin in Finland on Monday. The joint conclusions at the end of the day are also expected to criticize Russia's continued involvement in the conflict in Ukraine with Russian partisans in the eastern part of the country. That language may be difficult to get signed off by Donald Trump. So we'll see whether the president does sign off on those conclusions, but I suspect that getting that sign off today may be more difficult than yesterday. It depends how much teeth they want to give those statements.
Okay, yeah, it sounds like another day of tense talks ahead there in Brussels at that NATO summit. For now, Dave Keating, thanks indeed.